In the US, 1 in 4 women experiences sexual violence. 1 in 5 women needs medical care after the abuse. In 2018, partner violence accounted for 20% of all violent crime. The home is the most dangerous place for women. In today's episode, I'm having a conversation with Brooke Kekos and Angeline Constantinou about domestic violence. Brooke and Angeline were both in a long-term relationship and were abused by their partners. Brooke spent 35 years trapped in a religious sect where indoctrination, abuse and trauma were prevalent, and she was raised by a narcissistic, abusive father. This led her to enter into a marriage for 17 years with a narcissistic, abusive man. However, in 2017, Brooke found her personal truth and power, and she was able to break free from both the relationship and the religion. She now is a relationship life coach, a rapid transformational therapist, and uses hypnotherapy and psychotherapy. She's the owner of Life Coaching Goddess and utilizes her professional expertise and unique life experiences to assist her clients with developing strategic life plans that are practical and have higher levels of success. Angeline got stuck in an abusive marriage for 23 years. She now is a life coach and podcaster of her own show, Let's Break the Silence with Angeline. In the episodes of her podcast, she shares her personal journey about surviving domestic violence and the steps she took to transform herself from victim to victor to a full-time successful entrepreneur. She's a powerful coach with the ability to empower women to leave their past, regain their power, and make a strong stance for their future. My name is Tina de Keyzer. Welcome to a new episode of the Women's Table. Brooke, Angeline, thank you for being here today, and thank you for sharing your personal stories with us about this very personal and sensitive topic. Thank you.
We are so happy to be here. Thank you.
And I'm very happy to be here too. Thank you.
Let me start with some facts and numbers about violence against women. And these numbers concern countries all over the world. And I would like to start with the Netherlands, the UK, Brazil, and end with the US. And please feel free to interrupt me whenever you feel like. In 2016, there was a research report, Violence Against Women, by the European Union Agency for Fundamental Rights. With this report, it was the first time that actual numbers were available and published. Let me start with some upsetting results from the Netherlands. 45% of all women have experienced physical or sexual abuse at some point in her life. 73% of those women have experienced sexual intimidation, and 1 in 10 women has been a victim of rape.
Wow.
So the most dangerous place for women is their own home. In many cases, the abusers are their partners, sometimes even friends or family members. What do you think of these numbers? Because I understand for both of you, the abusers were your former partners, right?
Yes.
That is correct. That is correct. They are not surprising, to be honest. Not surprising at all.
And me too. They're not surprising at all.
No?
I am not surprised.
Well, I think it's quite upsetting that half of the women in the Netherlands have experienced physical or sexual abuse.
I know. It's horrible.
It is. It's terrible. Very terrible.
And about the part that the home is the most dangerous place for women, what do you think of that?
That is so very true. So very true. It's you find that it all starts for myself. It started when I was a child because I was in that type of environment. So that was all I knew. So you continue to do the same thing. So if you were raised in an abusive household, you're going to pick abusive partners. Everybody knows this. And you're going to keep repeating the cycles until you can understand that you can do better.
Exactly. And yes, it does happen in the home. For me, it happened late at night at around 11 p.m. in December of 1999. So I was lying in my bed. I was crying because he was verbally abusing me. And I tried to ignore him. I mean, I was in my robe. I turned over. I was crying. And then I said, well, you know what? I'm going to get up and just go into the other bedroom. Mm-hmm. Well, I didn't make it into the other bedroom. He took me from behind by the neck and threw me against the wall. I broke my nose. I was all bruised up. I was lying on the carpet. He took me to the emergency room, which is not unusual for an abuser to do that. I was in intensive care ICU until 5 a.m. And the surgeon came in and said that we need to do reconstructive nose surgery. It happened in 2 days.
Okay. So what did you say to the emergency room? What did your husband say, your ex-husband? How did he explain this?
Well, this is the part where I messed up because I was afraid. It was fear. I told them that I fell down the stairs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what women do, right? We don't want to admit. We always cover for our abuser. We don't want to. We feel the shame. It's like we feel the shame for them for what they did to us, and we're like, oh, we got to cover this up because we don't want anybody to know the truth of really what happened for them. It's almost like you're covering it up for them. It's like they have you so tricked.
Right.
Wow.
So is it because you want to protect them, or is it that you don't say you're being abused because you're ashamed to admit that you let it happen?
I think shame is a huge, huge factor. You're ashamed to, one, admit that you allow that to happen. Shame because you're afraid of how you're going to be perceived by everybody else. It's a lot of outside appearances where you're feeling like you're going to be judged. And then it's also the fear that you feel of leaving. So if you go out and you say, this man is abusing me, right? Yeah. You've said to the world now, you're being truthful about it, right? So you can't keep going back to this man because everybody else is going to hold you accountable. It's almost a fear of you being able to stand up for your own self and say, yes, I am being abused, because you know the repercussions of that, because then you're going to have to be strong enough to leave. And so we keep covering it up, right? Because it's easier in that way, because it's no different than an alcoholic. And I always go back to this because a abusive relationship and a codependent relationship is an addiction. And I always want to help people realize that more and more, because they don't realize that it's just like any other addiction, a gambling addiction, an alcoholic addiction, drug addiction. The trauma bond is so real, so addicting, that this is the reason, a large reason of why we stay.
Yeah, because I think that is one of the main questions people are wondering. Why does she stay? Why did she stay?
Mm-hmm. Yes, that is probably the $1 million question that people always ask me, because they don't understand it. And until they've walked in our shoes and understood what it's like to be in an abusive, codependent relationship, they're not going to understand, unfortunately. And that's okay. They don't need to understand. But it's the judgment of it, right? Yeah. But we need to all release. There is no reason for the judgment, because they don't know, they don't understand. And if you've never had an addiction, which would be crazy to say because most humans have had some form of an addiction, they can realize that how powerful it can be over your mind. And in abuse, you're also being gaslighted all the time. Okay. So your reality is always warped. So it's very hard to look outside of that and understand what's real and what's not.
Yeah. So when you say you're being gaslighted, is it like then that the abuser gives you the feeling that you're the idiot, you're the crazy one?
Yes. That, for me, that was a large portion of the abuse cycle for me. My ex-husband was very good at gaslighting and manipulating me to make me feel as if change the whole script, like as in it was my fault, and what I said and what I did it was all my fault, why I made him angry and why he reacted this way. So for me, I always was like, oh, well, he changed the perception of the whole memory of the whole event. And I had to just sit there and be like, well, maybe he's right. Maybe it was my fault. I'm the one that caused this. I was the one that made him stuff my face in the pillow and not let me breathe, or throw me against the wall, or, this was my fault. I should have kept my mouth shut. Yeah. And so that's probably the biggest part of an abuser, is really emotionally and mentally just bringing you down into a space where you don't know what's real and what's not.
No.
That's true.
Yeah. Was it the same for you, Angeline?
Yes. I mean, he would insult me. He wrote letters to the New York State Police and local sheriff's office. Oh, yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then shortly after, I filed for divorce. But that wasn't until May of 2010.
Yeah.
That was the straw that broke the camel's back for me. And I was married for 23 years. But when I found out, I had to go file an order of protection. Then after that, I drove 4 hours to go to Long Island so I could stay for 10 days and recuperate from the whole ordeal. So, oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was gaslit, everything. You name it.
Yeah.
You name it.
Brooke, how long were you married?
So I was married for 17 years, and it's kind of interesting. I always look back and, a lot of us that have been abused or gotten out of these toxic relationships, we're always sometimes feel a little bit of shame around, like, why wasn't I smarter? Why didn't I see what was happening? I didn't even know, to be honest, that I was in a narcissistic abusive relationship. I knew something wasn't right, but I never understood. I didn't know what a narcissist was. I didn't even think of anything like that, because honestly, it was all I had ever known. My father was very much like my ex-husband in a lot of ways. And so it was like they were like a mirror of each other. And so it was kind of just all I knew. When I kind of figured out what I started to be like, what is going on here? My aha moment was when my ex-husband was so angry, he took a knife to my throat. And that was the moment when I was like, what am I doing here? It was almost like oh my God, this something's not right. This is not okay. Like I've been dealing with all of this. It wasn't like he was like somebody that was extremely abusive and I'd end up in the hospital or anything like that. I mean, there was physical abuse. That wasn't the huge part. It was more the emotional, the mental abuse of that happened for me. And so I was like, oh, I kept telling myself I can handle this. This is okay. Like, I'll stay for the kids. But once he took the knife to my throat, then I started to understand. And, I lifted that whole Pandora's box and I was like, oh my God, he's a narcissist. And there's this, and this makes so much sense. So the more that I was able to make myself become aware of his tactics, of the way his mind worked and the way that he treated me each time that there was a moment where he was manipulating me or the way he was acting, I became more and more aware. I started reading books about narcissists, and I started just really getting myself more knowledgeable about how the abusive man's mind works in any form. I mean, it comes in any way, right? You can have a boss that's abusive. You can have, anything like
That's
that.
true.
So the more that I became more aware, then I was like, okay, I have to finally leave this relationship. But I mean, that was 17 years. And for you, it was 23. I mean, that's many years of living the same repetitive cycle. A lot of suffering when it comes to removing that addiction.
Yeah. A few years ago, I met a woman who had left an abusive relationship for many years. And at one point, I asked her the same question. Why did you stay so long? What happened? Why did you stay so long? And she told me something interesting. And she said, every time I tried to leave, and every time he found me, every time I went back to him, every time. At one point, she said, I wasn't sure which fear was bigger, the fear to stay or the fear to leave. Can you relate to such a statement?
Oh, yes.
Yeah? Yes, most definitely. There was, I think, so much fear of the unknown, but it's also, I think, the core beliefs of yourself after you've been abused for so long is, oh, I'm not enough. I'm not worthy. So you being able to have the strength to leave is so it's so fearful. It's scary. It's very, very scary. And so much so that I did leave at one point in the middle of my 17-year marriage. I had been cheated on. And, obviously as a woman that's been scorned, I was angry. I wanted to get revenge and all of these things. And so I packed up my son at the time. He was 3, and packed everything that in the house. We got a moving truck and we were gone before he came home from work one day. I depleted the whole bank account and, I took it all, and I ended up filing for divorce. And of course, a man of the stature of being a narcissist was the anger that came out of him was very, very intense. But it was something I felt like I needed to do. I didn't even know, honestly, what I was doing at the time, because it was so scary for me to be even leaving. And we were actually separated for about 9 months, but I ended up going back because that codependency and was so, so strong. And I felt like, oh, I don't think I can do this on my own. I'm going to go back. He's making all the promises. He's saying he's going to do all these things and things are going to change. And, he wanted, I'll do the therapy. I'll do whatever you want. And I fell into the trap. And I went back, and of course, things just go back to the same way. Nothing changes.
No. Angeline, when you left, was that the first time you left, or did you?
Yeah, that was the first time I left. And it was scary because I didn't want to be accused of abandonment, meaning abandoning. I made sure that I cleared that with the lawyer when I got my protective order. I said, I'm going to Long Island to spend time with my family because I need support right now, because this was like, you know what I mean? Like everything's unfolding now, and I'm by myself doing this. And then I found out that he depleted most of our savings account, and he wrote balance transfer checks against our credit cards to buy mutual funds. I found myself $50,000 in the hole.
Wow.
Oh my.
Yeah. So talk about a big blow. But I had that strength in me. I don't know what it's like. I just had that strength in me that I'm going to get through this. And I'm one of my first cousins, helped me. She said, you deserve to live a better life. She kept ingraining that in me. Yeah. And then I said, you know what? I have the strength. So when I came back, I had to meet with the sheriff first before I went home. And they warned me. Well, he said it in a nice way. He said, do not rescind the protective order. It was a limited protective order. So he said, don't rescind it, because guess what's going to happen? If I make a call the next time, they're not going to take it seriously.
Yeah.
So I said, I'm not going to. I'm not going to. I went home, and he was like love bombing me, blah, blah, blah. I missed you. I missed you. And then I went into the office where I used to work because I worked in his business. And I found a letter that he wrote to the New York State Police and the authorities. And then I said, that's it. I'm filing for divorce.
Yeah.
I said, I have to make a plan. So I worked behind the scenes, and I found one of the best lawyers in Dutchess County, New York. And I said, you know what? I deserve to live a better life. Yeah. I said, this is not good for me. I mean, I cried. I admit that I cried about it. That's part of the grieving process. That's something that I think most women go through. Then I felt relieved. And then I made a 1-year plan to move to Saratoga Springs, which I did.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Thank you. What a story, right?
Amazing. Yeah, that's amazing. Well, I mean, you had he was so difficult in so many ways. So it really took you being able to really stand in your power. And that's so hard when you're grieving the loss of an addiction, if you will. You know what I mean? I mean, I know for myself, it was like the divorce process is really, really difficult, and you're grieving a lifetime of, a long time relationship of, it may have been abusive, but at the same time, it's still like this addiction that you're kind of getting over and you're suffering through, and a lot of pain and sadness that come along with it. Yeah. So it's not easy to be able to stand your ground and keep doing the healing work for yourself.
No, I did a lot of inner healing work, and I took personal development courses, and I went to a therapist for 1.5 years, and she really helped me. Yeah. Very grateful for that.
Yeah. Did you get help, Brooke? Therapy?
Oh, yes, most definitely. I did a lot of therapy. That was probably the biggest thing of being able to finally start being real with my feelings and sit with, kind of what I went through and what happened, and just being realistic with myself of, okay, these are some serious beliefs that I had about myself that were limiting me in wanting to become better and not be okay with this type of behavior anymore. The rapid transformational therapy that I now do really helped me getting rid of my limiting beliefs and kind of really understanding more of the trauma that I had chosen subconsciously to forget that was really blocking me.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, both of you. Okay, so back to the numbers. So we're still with the Netherlands here. 1 in 5 women has experienced physical abuse by a partner. 11% has experienced sexual violence by a partner. 3% has avoided the own home situation due to domestic violence. Imagine that you don't want to go home. You just don't want to go home. You're afraid to go home.
Right.
Because you do not know what is going to happen. In most cases, the abuser is a man. Yes, of course, that's something we already knew. In the Netherlands, every 10 days, a woman dies as a consequence of domestic violence. And every week, a child dies as a consequence of domestic violence. And in the UK, every week, 2 women die as a consequence of domestic violence. Another country where violence against women actually is extreme is Brazil. And it turns out that every hour, 530 women are being abused, raped, or murdered.
Wow. That's a huge number of women that's awful. That's absolutely awful.
Yeah. So when I get to the States, this is not good as well. Every 3 seconds, someone experience some form of abuse in the United States, male or female.
That's even worse.
Yeah, you think so?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. 1 in 4 women experience sexual violence. 1 in 5 women need medical care after the abuse. From 2016 to 2018, the number of intimate violence victimizations increased by 42%.
The numbers are,
Wow.
I mean, you don't look at those every day. You know what I mean?
No.
You don't really understand what really is going on behind the scenes. I think it's a lot of what is sadly happening is it is generational trauma that is causing the abusers to keep being the abuser, right? It just keeps going and going because if they were abused by their father, then they're going to be abusive to their partners and so on and so on. And until humans can realize that they are abusing one another and understand that they need to heal themselves and realize and look within, it's going to continue to happen. It's really about people doing some self-reflection and these abusers being able to understand that these things are not okay and be able to heal their own trauma because they're not just choosing. They don't choose to be an abuser. They learned the behavior from somewhere or did it because of something. So it's in order for them to be able to understand that that's not the way they have to live. They don't have to be that person.
But isn't it so that if you are an abuser, that you say to yourself, like, I don't have a problem. She's the problem. She makes me do this because this is also what I've heard. Why did you make me do this? Yeah. What can you do when the abuser thinks he's not the one with the problem?
Unfortunately, that means that he's really stuck in that victim mentality. So he thinks he's the victim all the time.
Yeah.
And until he can move past that, and you know what, he may never in this lifetime, the abuser may never move past that in this lifetime or recognize that they are really just having that victim mentality. And that for the most part, it's about the person that's being abused being able to realize what's really happening. And the more that people can listen to other stories and the more that we can make people be aware of what is not okay and how to stand in your power as a woman and how to make sure that you realize that you don't have to be the victim, that you can leave a situation and that you are powerful enough to do so, then these things are going to continue to keep happening. But I really do think that women are becoming more empowered than ever, that this is our era coming up. And I think that this is the time where women are going to be like, this is the time to say no, like this type of behavior is unacceptable. And the more women can keep saying, no, this is not okay, I'm not going to put up with this, the more that the person that is the abuser is going to realize that, you know what, that there is something wrong with them. Something's wrong. And being able to heal their own trauma, hopefully, and become awakened enough to understand that there's this dynamic that's not working anymore.
Yeah. Angeline, would you like to add something?
Yes, definitely. This is our era. No doubt about it. I agree with Brooke for empowerment. And I see that shift happening, that I see that women are collaborating just like we right now. Yeah. We're all collaborating and supporting each other. You know, with domestic abuse during COVID, it really went up.
Yeah.
And that's what prompted me to start my podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that's beautiful because the more that, like I said, your podcast is great. Like, yeah, let's break the silence. Like, let's get this out into the open. Let's say, let's rip the Band-Aid off and let's just really start talking about what is real here and what needs to change not only for women, but as human beings, as how we treat one another and how the things that we see day to day need to change on an overall aspect.
Exactly. That's why I created my podcast, to break the silence on domestic abuse, to help women find their voice and to regain their power.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because if I could do it, they could do it. I had mentors. I had to break through those self-limiting beliefs because they were so ingrained in me.
Yeah.
And it's a process.
Yes. It's a long process.
Long process. One coaching session will do it. No. Sorry. It's going to take 3 months. It could take 6 months.
It's been 5 years for me and I still have issues, you know?
Right. Exactly.
You know, the most beautiful part of the stories of the both of you is that you both became coaches, focusing on women empowerment.
Yes.
Exactly.
This is amazing.
Very passionate about that.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah. I would also like to refer to the Netflix series Made. Did you watch the series?
Yes. Great series. Absolutely. A very, very good depiction of what it's like to be. And, you know, she wasn't necessarily being abused physically. It was more of a fear and intimidation and emotional and mental kind of abuse. You know, she even felt like, oh, I'm not really here because I'm not being abused. But she knew that something wasn't right? Yeah. Even though, you know, she knew something wasn't right for her and her daughter. But I mean, it's very powerful way to show that it is an addiction. You know, she did end up going back at one point, and, you know, there was a space and time where she thought that's all she could do and all she could be. And it's, you know, it's just a very good depiction of what it's like to be an abused woman.
Yeah. Did you know that the series is based on a true story?
I did know that. Yeah.
Yes, that I know. Yeah.
What part of the series had the most impact on you? Angeline, did you watch it?
I didn't watch it. I didn't get a chance to watch it.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. Brooke, what part of the series had the most impact on you? What was like, oh my, this is horrible?
I think for me it was the poor thing. I mean, she probably had one of the worst circumstances ever to be in an abusive relationship because she didn't have any real family to support her. She had a mother that was not mentally well, and then she also didn't have any money or anything to stand on to be able to feel like she even had some type of empowerment. So she like literally was stripped of all power. She didn't even have the money to back her up. You know what I mean? It was like, I think the most powerful part of the series was just to really show the fact that even though she didn't have anything, and she had to literally scrape herself up from the bottom of the barrel to try to make things work for her and her daughter, really showed that any woman is capable of being able to leave a situation that is not good for her, is not good for her child, any of those things. But it also showed a really good, like I said before, the dynamic of her being not feeling good enough about herself, where it was like she could fall easily back into that trap. And she did, right? Yeah, it's so easy. You know, it shows even when she's at the abuse shelter, one of the girls ends up, you know, that she becomes friends with goes back to her abuser, because that happens all the time. That is the norm. Many women will leave. They think they're powerful and they're strong and they're like, oh, I can do it. And then the man comes back, or he threatens her, or he's like, please come back, I'll change. And then you fall back into that same old cycle because it's so much easier. It's more familiar for your brain, right? It's all your mind knows. So it's like, okay, let's just go back to what I know, because this feels uncomfortable. Getting out of this relationship feels so uncomfortable. It's better for me to be here. I feel safer in this, which is totally crazy to even say, but your mind feels safer in the abusive relationship because not being in it feels so uncomfortable.
Yeah. For me, the scene that had the most impact on me was after she went back. She thought that he really had changed. Was the part that he showed again his true colors, and she realized that he hadn't changed. And then he left and she fell to the floor and she said to herself, I'm so stupid. Oh, it was heartbreaking. It was heartbreaking.
Yeah, it was actually very triggering for myself to watch the show. You know, there was some tears, and in some stuff because it reminded me so much of, my own situation in the past at times. You know what I mean? It's very triggering to see a woman be like, oh, because it's the way you feel. You feel like, oh, I'm so stupid. Why would I do this again? It just, you put yourself down and you just give yourself so much negative talk because you're like, every time something happens bad or there's a big blowout or there's a big fight or there's violence in the home, you immediately just are like, why am I so stupid? Why do I continue to do this? So on some level, but it's just, you get over it very quickly. They come back, you say sorry, and you move on because it's just easier just to survive, really.
Yeah. What I'm wondering is, why do you think society puts the blame on women who stay in an abusive relationship, the victim blaming? Like the question, why does she stay? Why isn't it like, oh my God, she stayed for 17 years. What's wrong with her? Why isn't it like, oh my God, he abused her for 17 years. What is wrong with him?
I agree with you so much. And honestly, I think it goes back to people not being understanding of the fact that it is an addiction. It is another form of an addiction. And if people could look at it that way, they could be like, oh, well, that makes sense. You don't judge an alcoholic why they keep drinking, because they're addicted, right? It's the same thing with someone that's in an abusive relationship. They are just as much addicted to the cycle and the abuse cycle and the bond that they think they have, right?
Yeah.
It is a trauma bond. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, unfortunately. And until people can realize it that way, I think that society will continue to judge the woman that stayed rather than the opposite way around, right? Just if they can start to understand it in a different perspective, of maybe it will help people to really realize the truth around it.
Yeah. Yeah. What would you like to say to people who judge women who stay in an abusive relationship? What would you like to say to them?
And you said if they're in a abusive relationship, you know what I would like to say to them? I would like to say to them, you know what? Knowledge is power. If they realize that something is not right, start doing the research, start understanding the dynamic of people's personalities. When I started to do that for myself, that was the more I understood, the more I just couldn't stop reading, because knowledge really is power. Because once you understand what an abusive relationship looks like, what codependency looks like, it starts to be these light bulb moments for yourself. And you're like, oh, that's why I'm doing what I'm doing, or that's why he's acting the way that he's acting. And it started to become more of like a unfolding of years of what had been going on, these abuse cycles between me and my ex-husband, the abuse cycles that with me and my father, those type of things. And so when I started to get more and more knowledge, it empowered me to be able to say, oh, I don't have to live like this. This is not a healthy relationship. And then I started to empower myself to understand what a healthy relationship looked like. It is really about getting outside of your comfort zone and really doing the deep research of seeing what's really going on and what's happening on your day-to-day level, and how that can empower you again.
Yeah. Thank you.
Exactly. I agree with Brooke. But also, the issue, I feel, is swept under the carpet. Unless you put yourself in someone else's shoes, honestly, why judge? I mean, because there's so many factors that go into this, and I didn't realize it. I mean, I thought I stayed in the marriage for another 8 years after that incident happened. Mm-hmm. Gradually, I realized through therapy, that this was not right for me, that this was harming me. I mean, I was financially abused, emotionally abused, physically abused, literally beaten down to the ground. And I managed to pick myself up because I wanted to. I wanted to make that change. Yeah. So I think there needs to be more awareness, more education. And we are working, myself and a production company, on producing a docuseries. Yeah. Real life stories of women who went through domestic violence, domestic abuse. And now they're sharing their stories. It's a huge undertaking, but this is why we need awareness. Yeah. There was a lady who was viciously murdered in Tampa, Florida a few days ago. And one of my friends shared the article with me. She was found in a trash can.
Oh my gosh.
This is why we need more movies like Babes and this one coming up. So we're looking for investors. You know, we have some investors that are lined up, you know, to fund the project, but we are looking for investors and sponsors because this needs to be brought out in the open.
Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah.
The more awareness that we can bring to it, the more we can help empower other women to leave this type of dynamic and these type of relationships. You know, another thing I would say to a woman that is in an abusive relationship right now, if she's too afraid to leave right now, I always tell them, you know what? Slowly get some help for yourself. Get a coach, get a therapist, someone that can be a mentor to show you, help you understand, bring to light what is really going on within your relationship. Because the more that you can kind of piece by piece put the puzzle together and start the healing process and realizing, you know, what's been happening behind closed doors, if you will, it'll keep empowering you to get stronger and stronger to be able to leave the relationship. And if it's about money, then you know what, you slowly start putting away your money, or you do whatever you need to do so that you do have the power to leave. Get into a support groups. There's lots of support groups on Facebook, I think, for women that are
there are.
used. It's just like, you know, anything else, get support where you can get it. People that are positive, that are going to help you realize and understand what type of relationship you're in, and that you can be okay outside of it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So make a plan.
Make a plan. Exactly.
Make a plan. Yeah. Make a plan. Make a plan, and make a plan to empower yourself, become more confident so that you can understand what's really going on.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's what I did.
Yeah.
That's what I did. Got a coach, empowered myself, and I had a therapist too. Always when you make a plan, let the authorities know where you're going.
Yeah.
If you're going to stay at a friend's house, let them know you're staying at a friend's house. You know what I remember? One time when I was going through my transition, I just happened to be home, and he started yelling at me for no reason, and the New York State troopers came. I remember one guy put the suitcase in the trunk. One of the state troopers actually helped me. He said, you know, where are you going? So I said, I'm going to stay at a friend's house for 2 days. Always make a plan and let them know exactly where you're going, what you plan to do.
Yeah. Okay.
Have an exit strategy in place.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I read an article on the internet, like, home is not a safe place for me. What can I do? And it also advises, make a safety plan.
Exactly.
Yes. Confide in your friends, family, neighbors, even if possible, develop a code with a trusted neighbor.
Exactly.
So they can come to your aid in case of an emergency.
Yes. It's all about setting up yourself to be able to feel some type of support, because without support, you're not going to feel strong enough to do it on your own.
Yeah.
Exactly. Always have support. Yeah. I had the support, I recall, of my next door neighbor, and the neighbor who lived across from me, he worked for the sheriff's office. He was a deputy sheriff.
Yeah.
So
I remember many, many years ago, I was a really young girl. I was, I think, 17 or 18, and I had broken off this relationship. So I went to the police to press charges. He was really aggressive, came to my house, came to my door, start making scenes, you know, crazy stuff. And at one point, they picked him up and they couldn't hold him. So the police officer gave me a call and he said, we're not going to press charges, but I will put a notification. So you just have to make this one phone call and just call, say your name, and we'll be there in a few minutes. Because if you are going through with pressing charges, we don't know what he will do because he's really aggressive. He's really angry. So maybe this is also some advice. Maybe you can make some sort of deal with the police. Like, okay, I'm not going to press charges, but I am scared. If I call, please come to my rescue.
Right. Yeah. Especially for women that have to feel severely in fear, because there is men that are so angry and so psychopaths, if you will, that you can be really fearful for your life. So being able to do something like that, I can understand why it's even more for them to leave that dynamic. So yeah, setting up something that you know that is going to be a strategy that you will feel safe with.
Yeah, yeah. And there's also the part about giving advice to someone you are concerned about. So it says, if you know of or are concerned about someone in an abusive relationship, there are some things you can do. You can keep in touch with this person to check if they're safe. You can ensure that it is safe for them to keep in touch with you, to find out what the best way is to communicate with this person in case the partner is really controlling, checking phones, or that you agree to some sort of code when you text or whatever it is. Be discreet in connecting with them when the abuser is present, and find out what services for survivors of violence against women are functioning. And if someone you know needs urgent help for whatever reason, be prepared to call emergency services like the police, health center, or a hotline. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Those are all really good. Those are really good ideas, and keeping it always, keeping people more aware of how they can help themselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
So in your case, like Angeline, let me start with you. Did you get any help from friends to leave your husband?
I did, yes.
Yeah.
Actually, the day I moved out, I hired a moving company that was recommended by a friend of mine. Mm-hmm. And they came along with a couple of other friends who came to make sure that I was safe. So I had a witness there. And I remember when I turned the keys over, because part of the agreement was that I had to leave the keys. So once I left the keys with him, I never looked back.
Yeah. Good for you.
Never looked back. That was an empowering moment. Yeah. And driving an hour and a half up here, because I had made many trips up here to look for an apartment. And I was just grateful that I had my own place to live.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, so that was an empowering moment when you hand over the keys and you never look back.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. How about you, Brooke? Did you get any help from friends?
Yes, the first time I did, I had the support of my friends and my family. The second time, honestly, was a little bit different because I definitely had support, but it was just the right time for the relationship to be done. And so things just went very smoothly for the most part. There was dynamics between us it was difficult, but it went so smoothly. I didn't have to, do everything that Angeline did, calling the police and dealing with all of that stuff. It was more of a peaceful leaving this time. Okay. So it worked out really well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. My last question. I think we kind of answered it already. But what would you like to say? What is your advice? Actually, what would you like to say to women who are in this situation of domestic violence and who feel that there's no way out, that it is all senseless, they don't know where to go, they don't know what to do, they have no clue where to start and how to leave? What would you like to say to these women that are listening now and they recognize themselves? Oh, my story is like Brooke. Oh, my story is like Angeline. But I don't have anybody. I don't know where to go, like the girl in Maids. What can you say? Can you say to this woman who listens right now? Brooke?
I would say, just like in Maids, she didn't have anywhere to go, but there is always domestic abuse shelters. They will take you in with open arms. That is always an option if you don't have support elsewhere. I would say also to them, don't let anyone ever take your power. Mm-hmm. Every time you are making the conscious choice to stay with the abuser, you are letting them take away your power, and you are more powerful than that. So just reminding them of that and to gain back their power also, that is just helping them to get more knowledgeable at how they can get out and that they are capable.
Yeah. Angeline, what would you like
to
say?
Yes, same thing. Okay, I would say have an exit plan, and you have the power to take your life back. But also, there's hope. Yeah.
Yeah, don't give up. There's always hope.
Never give up. There's always hope. There's always hope. So never give up on yourself. There's hope out there. People are looking for hope.
Yeah.
I know myself when I shared my story, 4 years ago, which took a lot of courage. I'm shaking like, like I had the phone and doing a Facebook Live. But you know what? That was a breakthrough. When I shared my story, it went viral. Yeah. Because someone is scrolling on social media. Yeah. Someone's looking for hope. Yeah. There's a woman out there who feels alone. They're not alone. I went through it too. I've been through it, sleeping on people's couches, living the gypsy life. I've been through it. So you're not alone. Yeah. There's hope. So never give up on yourself. And there's hope. Yeah. Never give up.
I love that. Always telling you're not alone. People, especially in an abusive relationship, you feel alone. You feel so alone because one of the reasons you don't want to out it to anybody. You don't tell your family. You don't tell your friends. You're very secretive about it. And so you do feel so alone. Yeah. But to realize that you don't have to feel that way. There's always going to be someone that presents to you that has the same story or has what they've been through, or they're going through it right now, and you can help each other through it. It's all about just being able to be honest with yourself and truthful and get the story out there.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, so this is what I would like to say to this beautiful woman who listens to us today. Maybe you stay because you think they will not believe me. Maybe you think this is my fault. Maybe I should not have said this or done that. I get it, but you cannot make people believe you. So it is very important that you detach yourself from their opinions as much as possible. So remember, you were there and you know what happened, and it happened to you. So no matter what, please remember these words. It is not your fault. Brooke and Angeline, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, so thank you for having me too.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of women, I think it's amazing that you want to talk about it because we already mentioned it. A lot of women are ashamed to share their stories, and you just did. And I really hope that your personal stories will inspire women and encourage women to take that very first scary step to leave their abusive situation.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brooke Kekos and Angeline Constantinou, for sharing your personal stories with us. It takes a lot of courage to do so. In the next episode, I talk to Cheyenne Smile. Cheyenne is a trans woman, and we talk about her youth, her life, and her decision to become a woman in every sense and meaning of the word. Cheyenne is a transformational coach, a speaker, and she roots for diversity, inclusion, and gender equality. Thank you all for listening. Please feel free to reach out to me. I would love to hear your story. My name is Tina de Keyzer, and this is the Women's Table.